Yeah. So let's suppose say we are having 4 indexes, and if we are keeping some time, let's suppose say if we are keeping 10 seconds defined in the auto load balancer. That means 10 seconds will be defined on each and every indexer. So what will happen? The data which is coming from universal forwarder to indexer, it will push the data on indexer 1, and it will push the data on indexer 1 for 10 seconds until it finds end of the file. So the data will be ingesting on indexer file for 10 seconds continuously until it find end of the file.
Okay.
And the other indexes will also follow the same. After this 10 seconds is completed and also end of the file is completed, it will go on to the second indexer, and again it will stay for 10 seconds. Again it will follow the same, and indexer 3 the same thing, and so on. It will be continued like this because we are defining some stanzas. Yeah, we are defining some stanzas. Auto load frequency 40, force time based on auto load balance true. These are the stanzas which we need to define, and it will be switching from one forwarder to another forwarder, like one indexer to another indexer to ingest the data. And caching and queue size. Usually queues will be having 500 KB. So what is this queues is, we are getting the data from inputs and then it will be going into parsing stage. So in between inputs and the parsing stage, and also between parsing and the indexing stage, we are having some queues defined in Splunk. So queues are nothing but we can say a pipe. So when it is when the data is traveling from inputs to a parsing stage, the data will be staying in a pipe because it is moving from input to parsing. When the data is staying in the pipe, that is nothing but queue. For clear understanding, I have just defining it as pipe. So it will be staying in the pipe, and which we can say it as queue, and the data will be in the queue for 500 KB. The data size will be 500 KB, which is staying in the queue, and then it will be moving into next stage. So when, for example, I'll show with this, you'll understand. So from inputs to parsing stage, we are having some queues defined. Now what is happening? Data is moving from inputs to parsing stage. Now for suppose inputs are coming from
the forwarder,
universal forwarder. Now my universal forwarder is down. But I'm getting the data continuously to parsing stage. How it is coming continuously? Because when the universal forwarder is down, still my data is present in queue. Existing queue. How much data will be existing in queue? 500 KB of data. Okay. So even if my universal forwarder is down, my data exists in queue, and this data will be moving into parsing stage.
And the data, I mean, the queue is in where? In the forwarder? Where is it?
All the queues are present in Splunk. All the queues. So let me explain you clearly on these queues. Actually, it is not documented anywhere, but somewhere I have copied it. Yeah. So usually we are having 4 types of queues. One is parsing queue, merging queue, typing queue, and also index queue. So all these pipelines and queues are present in Splunk. So for data input pipeline, that means the data which is coming from inputs to parsing. In the Splunk, we are having these 4 types of queues. And queues, what they'll do is like, if I talk about parsing queue, in the props.configuration file, whatever the stanzas we are defining, for example, line breaker we have defined in parsing queue. Sorry, in the props.configuration file, we have defined some line breaker. So what it will do? My Splunk will pass this line breaker to parsing queue. So all the parsing should be happening in the queue, and the results will be moving to next stage. So between inputs and a parsing stage, we are having all these queues, and all these queues are nothing but stages. So one stage will be completed accordingly, and then it will give my results on to next stage, which is nothing but indexing. And for your reference, I'll write here. If you want to make a note, please do it, because these are important queues in Splunk. One is parsing queue, and the second one is I can say aggregator. Aggregator is nothing but merging. For merging purpose, we are using this aggregator queue, and merging is nothing but line merging, and all timestamp extractions will be used. Timestamp and extractions, everything will be used in the aggregator queue. And the next one will be a typing queue. Typing queue, which will be having regex, whatever the regex you are defining in Splunk, or whatever the regex you are writing in props.configuration file, you'll be having everything in typing queue. And the last one will be,
like if you save them, or even if you don't save.
We will not save them, but we are pushing the data. We are pushing the data onto next stages.
Okay, so that's why it has to stay in somewhere, and that's a queue name, typing queue.
Yeah, and if you see here, there are some issues where the data is not ingesting in Splunk properly. So all these are nothing but storing in groups. All the queues are stored in Splunk in the form of groups. For example, you got some issues in the sense your line breaking is not breaking properly, even if you write it properly. And you'll be checking all the queues, because if any queue is blocking my data to move it to the next stage or not. So you'll be checking all the queues, and even though you are not finding anything, so what you can do is like, you can go into internal index, and if you search for example query for troubleshooting, what is the troubleshooting is like, you should go into logs. Index is equal to internal. Usually I told you that if there are any issues, or if there are any errors in the logs, then you'll be going into internal index, and you can check the data. So you'll be going into index is equal to underscore internal, and you can write here group is equal to space here, and if you write group is equal to q, and if you write for blocking, just typing star blocking star, that means it will show me if there is anything blocked in my queues, then it will give me all the results, which queue is actually blocked, why we are not getting the data properly. Everything will be given from this query. And this is not so important unless you get some issues in Splunk.
Okay.
And for this sake, we'll be defining this queue size 500 KB. So in every queue, we are having 500 KB loaded. And if the UF is down also, we'll be having 500 KB. Until this 500 KB is completed, we'll not get the data if 500 KB is ingested. And even though my universal forwarder is still down, at that time you'll not receive any data. But if there is an issue with universal forwarder and it has restarted by itself, then what will happen? There is no delay in the events, because you are getting the continuously the data, and 500 KB will be ingested, and then when universal forwarder is up, you will be getting the next data immediately. There will not be any lagging.
What if the universal forwarder stayed down for a long time?
Long term, then you will not see any data in Splunk. You should go into universal forwarder and you should check whether Splunk service is running on that universal forwarder properly or not. If it is not running, you just need to restart Splunk service. When you try to restart Splunk service, you'll get the errors. If there are any errors, you'll get the errors shown while the Splunk is restarting. And you can make a note of those errors and you can search it in Google. Maybe you'll get some answers. Otherwise, if my Splunk service is running properly, then you should go into var log Splunk from universal forwarder end. If it is suppose a Linux universal forwarder, then I'll go into OPT Splunk forwarder, var log Splunk, and then here you'll find splunkd.log. You should go into this splunkd.log and you'll need to check for all the logs. Why there is an issue, why my universal forwarder is not throwing any data.
Okay.
Indexer acknowledgement. Now you see, you are sending the data from universal forwarder to indexer. Now my universal forwarder should know whether the indexer has accepted the data or not. Usually will not get any acknowledgement message, but if you are defining this use acknowledgement, what it will do is like my universal forwarder is sending some data. For example, it has sent the first event to my indexer. Now my indexer will come to know that, okay, I have received the first event. Now my indexer will acknowledge it, and it will tell the universal forwarder that I have received the first event. Now you can send me the second event. If you are writing use acknowledgement, it will be the process like this. And if you are writing use acknowledgement, there will not be any data loss, because in Splunk we are finding that some of the data is getting dropped in the middle itself. We will not know what data is being dropped unless you check each and every line in the events, because we are having millions of events, and in the millions of events, if 500 events get dropped, will you know it?
No.
No, will not know. Hello?
Yeah.
We will not know, because compared to millions of events, 500 events are very less. So at that time, the data is
Yeah,
lost.
unless those 500 ones are the one we're looking for.
Yeah. So
Then
yeah,
we'll know. Okay.
if you want to check this 500, unfortunately, some of the session ID we did not find in my events. So what
Mm.
I'll know? Okay, now I'll be knowing that my data lost. So it should not be happen in future. At that time, what I'll do? I'll use ACK command. Use acknowledgement. Then what it will do? It will check one event. If one event is received by Splunk, it will say, okay, I have received first event, you should send me second event. After the second event is sent, Splunk again, it will say my second event is received, now you can send me third event. So in this way the data will not get lost. Each and every event will be monitored.
But does it add any kind of load to the system or performance issue? Is it like recommended to do it this way or no?
It is usually not recommended because the time will be getting increased.
Okay.
Usually we'll receive all the data at a time, very in a less time. But
Yes,
when
yes.
we are writing this acknowledgement, it will tell the forwarder that, okay, send me again. Okay, send me again.
Yeah, too much chatting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
time is taking a lot. And another thing, if one event is not received, my second event got missed, then my receiver will say, my indexer will say that we did not receive the second event. Then what the universal forwarder will do? It will again resend that event. It will not make Splunk to miss any of the event. And if you see here, the last point automatically increases the wait queue to 3 times to meet larger space requirement for acknowledgement. See, it is increasing 3 times. So usually will not use this use acknowledgement. We will use this use acknowledgement even if it is only the critical data, and we are dropping the data. If the data is getting dropped in Splunk only, we'll use this. Otherwise, we will no need. But it is something interesting. Yeah. And next one is selectively forwarding data to indexes. This we have discussed earlier. So I want to send some particular specific data to one indexer and some other different data to some other indexer. So we are having here in the example, he has shown that my forwarder is sending 2 different types of logs. One is QA logs, one is operation logs, OPS.
Okay.
So for QA logs, he is defining a different indexer called srv.qa. And for operations, he is using srv.operations. 2 different indexes are being used to send 2 different types of logs. Again, the routing is different. The routing in the inputs.configuration file, he has defined TCP routing is equal to QA. That means the routing will be happening only from this QA indexer. And the second one, it is only through OPS indexer. So if you see here, he's using outputs.configuration file to push the outputs onto indexes and inputs.configuration file in the universal forwarder.
Okay.
And configuring forwarder inputs. You have several options for creating inputs on a forwarder. Yeah, as we know, we are having different types of inputs for getting the data onto Splunk. From the initial class onwards, we are seeing only the inputs.configurations, where we are defining everything in inputs.configurations and we are getting the data. And as I also told you, we also use add-ons and apps. For apps, we are defining inputs.configuration file, And in the add-on, we are directly installing it from splunkbase.com. And here he also said that you can run CLI commands, command line interface. So through backend also you can run some commands and you can get the data ingested on Splunk. Usually we'll not running any commands, but we are creating the inputs.configuration file. The most important thing is. And there are different types of data that can be ingested in Splunk. It is like CSV, JSON, XML data, many types of data. It can also be in a different ways. One is the universal forwarders, which we are learning continuously. But the other things are database through DB Connect and through HTTP. HTTP will be coming in the next classes. And it is through scripting where we are writing the scripts, and it can also be modular inputs. That means the scripts will be using the scripts only. And the next one is the data syslogs. Data syslogs and everything I'll be covering it in real-time classes, real-time examples where I'll covering all these data ingestions again.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is what he has explained. Inputs.configuration file on the forwarder gathers the local. So on the forwarder side, he has given the path, the information needed. That means this is the information mostly to get the data from the universal forwarder. The first main important thing is to get the monitoring stanzas, because we have to know from which path the data is, getting ingested onto Splunk. So that path has to be defined in Splunk, so that Splunk will be going directly into the path of the universal forwarder, and then it will ingest the data.